Would you like to be credited as Ronny Matthew?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, cool.
So like, I have a pretty underpowered, very heavy former police car. I want not just more worn down tires, but tires that don't grip as well. So there's this thing called tread rating. The lower the number, the better the grip essentially. The higher the number, the longer the tire will last, but the grip is reduced. So I want a higher number, but a lot of these are pretty low number tread wear ratings, which means I will grip. And I can offset that with tire pressure, and like we have other tricks and stuff. It's just more work than I want to do because I'm lazy. One, you have to come up with a creative track every single time that focuses on the skills of all levels of driver.
Right.
But we got concrete barriers in the way today. That kind of messes up the flow of my options. And there's a ton of debris on the other side, which is not great for tires. I think they had a burnout box, and they must have had, you know, like a do your own donut box or something, because there's so much debris. So hopefully we can get that swept up at some point, but you know, I'll work around it. What I set up here is what I like to call the basics box. Okay. This is for people that just want to warm up, or people that are just, you know, wanting to focus on their basic skills. I try to give the minimum amount of room to perform something like a 90 or a 180, which are two very basic maneuvers that you would call like in the mid-grade or beginning of stunt driving. The beginning of stunt driving is don't hit anything, follow directions, you know, don't try and show off. And then you graduate from there. Everyone thinks like, oh, it's immediately drifting, it's immediately sliding. No, just follow directions. Don't hit the hero car, that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna work around, let's see. I'm gonna set up a box down here. Maybe. This a nice big gate. I think this is enough. Enough? Is that enough? I'm gonna try something right quick. If you want to stand right here, that would be good. Okay. Yeah. So whenever I set up tracks, I like to test the things very lightly. This is what I call an option box. It's larger than most targets than we aim for as higher level drivers. But since we're kind of limited on options for design, I like to give the driver the option to approach this box however they want. So they can do what I did, which was a 180 through the side on either side, so you can practice left and right. Or you can come in and do something called a 90, where I would just come straight through and hit a 90 both directions. The ultimate goal is to just land in the box. And if the car is appropriate for it and you have the skills to do it, there are some people that I'm going to encourage to do a donut and keep it inside of the box. Not an easy task, but you know, that's how we scale when we're kind of limited on our design options.
So I just want to start with a little bit of background. So how did you end up doing this? Were you into acting first and then you got into this? Have you always just been kind of like a daredevil?
Yes. So I guess if you want to start like from the beginning, my passion for cars started with my first present that I can remember being a Hot Wheels, and I got that in kindergarten. And that's literally all I've ever wanted for birthdays, Christmases, whatever. If you want to get me a gift, get me a Hot Wheels or a Lego set, I'd be the happiest kid on earth. But to transition to a professional career became a challenge somewhere around high school. I wasn't academically advanced in comparison to a lot of my peers. I graduated 278th out of 344. So, like, it hurt. And like a lot of it was my own undoing from my cultural background of being an Indian, where it's like, you have to take the hard courses, you have to take the honors, you have to do the AP course. And they all destroyed me very thoroughly. I probably would have done much better if I just stayed in like basic learning courses or even some remedial classes. Unfortunately, I didn't. And so that kind of carved a path in terms of what I could do for college. Started in engineering, knowing that the only thing that I had a passion for was cars. And so the original plan was to go to Japan and work for Honda or Toyota or Nissan in their R&D department, hoping that my engineering degree would carry me there. Unfortunately, engineering decimated me as well. And so I went to a technical college to become a mechanic. And I thrived because I love getting my hands dirty. I was a very hands-on person, which is generally frowned upon in my culture, but you know, I didn't know what else I was going to do for a career. In the midst of that thrive, I ended up at a BMW program and in a BMW dealership. That's a whole story in itself. But I still had the need for speed. You know, it was this itch that I had to scratch just to see if I liked it or not. And so I started racing. I did autocross. I built cars for people, and then the people I built them for would let me drive their cars. And I was like, man, that's a great deal. You know, I'll work for free if you let me just take your car for a few laps. Started to learn everything I could. Obviously, you know, I couldn't be on the track every week. So fortunately, the internet was there. Learned all I can about weight balance, weight transfer, apex, racing lines, brake zones, just various racing techniques that the next time I went out onto a track or got an opportunity to drive hard, I'd be able to test the theory and see if I could physically figure it out. Fast forward that, I end up as a manager at BMW and Mini Cooper. I was the youngest in the nation for a while. Diagnostics was like my jam. I didn't have a girlfriend, and I didn't have many other commitments. I didn't have any vices. Like, my work was my everything. And so I poured myself into it, again, with the idea of like, I just want to be the best driver and builder that I can be with the opportunities that are afforded to me. So part of being a diagnostic technician is knowing how to push a car to a limit. And so all these BMWs and Mini Coopers, I knew that, you know, if you push the car to 100%, it would break. But if you push the car to 80% and something was going wrong, then something was wrong with the car, because I was operating within 80% of its capacity, which is, for a customer, standard, or should be regarded as standard. I don't know what that horn is. All right, they're done. So you know, once I hit that 80% mark, I would be able to recreate all these issues that no other technician could replicate, because the customer they had such specific conditions for their issues. And so like that kind of expanded, and I hit the glass ceiling of being a manager, so to speak, of middle management, where it's like I wasn't making money, I wasn't happy, I had no social life, like something had to change. And it definitely felt like a case of, it didn't matter what dealership I went to, it was going to be the same thing over and over. And so eventually, you know, I was a very prayerful kind of guy, and so I kind of prayed about it, and like, I don't know if you would call it a hallucination. I sincerely thought God himself told me to do it, but he told me to try acting. And I was like, you know what, man, I'm losing my hair, I have an eye twitch, I'm single, I'm like 25, 26. Like I've had 2 midlife crises. It felt like I got to try something while I still can. And so I started taking acting classes, and I told myself, as soon as I feel ridiculous doing this, or it feels like it's not for me, I'm out. Got to pull the plug on this. Because it's expensive to get into, and a career change isn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. The older you get, the harder it is. So I was like, if it's not going to work out, I'm just going to have to figure something else out. And it worked out. You know, I felt a ton of success. I felt validated. You know, there was a lot of things that I didn't realize I could be, or there were a ton of things I could do while acting. So I found passion in it, and, you know, I started booking college projects, and there were like little projects here and there. But I was booking work, and that's something that, you know, I've always heard you have to be a film student to do. You had to do theater in high school. You had to go to a prestigious college of the arts to be able to be an actor. And I was still finding success, and it was enough for me, and I was happy. So, you know, as I got onto more and more sets, I would find more and more people, and they would ask what I do and all that kind of stuff. And I'd be like, you know, have a background as a mechanic, did mechanical engineering, speak Japanese, used to race a lot. I learned Japanese so that I could, in anticipation of going to Japan for the Honda and Toyota job, which I never got. But the more I talked to people, they'd be like, oh, so you know a lot about cars. And, you know, that would get around. And there was a certain point where I picked up another job as a mechanic, and I told them very explicitly, like, hey, I'm an actor. My priority is to be on set. So if something comes up, I'll let you know, if you just give me that grace to have those days to work. And they were like, yeah, as long as you get your work done, we're totally cool with you pursuing that. Oddly enough, at that shop, I came across a lot of Porsches and Ferraris and Lambos, very unexpectedly, because they hired me as the European car mechanic. And so I started working on those cars, and I started learning their limits. And all of a sudden, you know, it kind of just snapped and dawned that it's got 4 wheels, it's got a brake pedal, it's got a gas pedal, it's got a steering wheel. It's a lot of money, acts a little bit different, but there's still mechanical limits, and at the end of the day, the car was created by a human. Like, it was designed by the same brain that I have. So, you know, got Ferraris, Lambos, Porsches, McLarens, all these cars that most people don't have access to, learn to drive and work on them. And so at the same time, I end up getting on more and more sets, because people are learning that, you know, not only am I good for talent, I'm good for cars also. And I was working on a movie called $1 Million Arm. Yes, thank you. So I was interviewing for $1 Million Arm to be a stand-in for one of the main actors, because I'm one of the only Indians in the Southeast in the entertainment industry. And while I was talking to him, he's like, oh, tell me what you do. Give me a little bit about your personality. And I tell him, you know, I work on these cars. I have access to all these exotic cars. Been a mechanic for all this time. And he's like, oh, I think I can actually use you in another way. And so on $1 Million Arm, they said, hey, we need to rent a bunch of exotic cars for this scene. And so they rented a Bentley from us, an Aston Martin DB9, a Ford GT, and there was a Lamborghini Murcielago as well. And they said, all right, you're in charge of placing and driving all of these cars for the scene, et cetera, et cetera. And people take notice of that kind of thing. And so people started referring to me as Ronny the Exotic Car Guy, which isn't a bad title. Like, I was happy with that at, 27, 28 years old, however old I was at the time. And that all translated to another group of people called the Picture Car Mechanics. They are hosted by the Transpo Department. Transpo is responsible for the transportation of the film sets, all the trucks, all the trailers, the people, everything. And then there's a subdivision called Picture Car Mechanics. And someone asked me, like, hey, would you want to be a picture car mechanic for an upcoming movie? And I said, if it pays money, I'm about it. Because at that point, like, I was so broke, and it was such a struggle. The starving artist thing was so real. I would legitimately sleep in my car outside of audition spots that were in other states because I couldn't afford a hotel, or I didn't have enough gas money to make it to the hotel and then to the audition spot and then back home. So like, you know, a lot of people would be like, oh, well, that's dumb. Why would you do that? And I wanted it. You know what I mean? Like, my thing is, this whole journey started with what I think is God telling me to be an actor. So like, when the big faith moments come, I have to take that leap. And if it falls in my face, that's my fault. Like, I did something, I followed a direction incorrectly. But, you know, I think the expression goes along the lines of, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I have to take the shot. And so that invite was to be a mechanic on Fast and the Furious 7, which is a big deal. And so if you remember in the movie, there's this car called the Lykan Hypersport, which is this red car, super angular, built-in Dubai, $1 million car, literally $1 million car. And they made kit cars that they could stunt in based on a Porsche Boxster. Porsche Boxster is a European car. No one wanted to work on them. They called me in specifically for that car. They saw what I could do. They said, hey, we're just going to let you hang around and work on other stuff also. And I ended up responsible for Paul Walker's GTRs in a couple of degrees. So the R35 GTR in Midnight Blue, one of them was accidentally set on fire while they were putting a roll cage in it, and they burned up half of the wiring harness. And they called me and they're like, hey, you want to redo a wiring harness? And I was like, as long as you pay me for it, I don't care what the work is, man. I am broke. I am so broke. Just pay me the money. And so I got on there, and you know, as I talked to other mechanics and other people, I'd be like, hey, I love driving, I love cars, whatever it takes to get driving to, I would love to do that. And I was just putting it out there, you know what I mean? Like, I know there's a lot of mechanics out there that say they can drive and they can't. It's like, you need seat time. Like, you need to be out on the track. You need to make mistakes. You need to understand physics. Like, there's a lot of things that have been figured out. There's a lot of resources and information out there, technical data that you can learn from and you can maximize with a mechanic's knowledge. But until you put it into practice, you're not going to get anywhere. So it was a hard sell as a mechanic to be the one saying, I can drive like you can. And since, you know, drivers are very proud people, they don't take too kindly to people saying it. But at the same time, no one's ever going to know until I say it and find an opportunity to prove it. So working on Fast 7 was a big deal because a mechanic took note of me and my abilities. His name is BJ Fisher. He's what I like to call my big brother in the industry. He is one of the best fabricators and mechanics I've ever come across. And he's the nicest guy, has the most patience in the world for everyone. Again, in an industry where there isn't a lot of patience to be had. So he invited me on to Baby Driver, which I had no idea what it was at the time. Now it's a big deal. But at the time I was like, sure, whatever. And I was at this huge crossroads too, because, you know, at the time, that's 2016 is when we started filming. I'm 31 years old. I just started dating who is my now wife. And if I wanted to pursue any serious relationship, I needed some kind of steady income. Because like, I'm not the guy that's like, I'm gonna bum off this girl and chase a dream that I don't know if I can make true. So the crossroad was either going to be work as an instructor at a church for a rehabilitation program for ex-cons and drug addicts and all that kind of stuff, and teach them technical skills so they can incorporate back into daily life, or I take this job on Baby Driver. And, you know, prayed about it. And going to Baby Driver just seemed to be the move that aligned with the passion that I felt like God put in me to begin with. And I'm so glad I did, because I ended up on it. again, as a mechanic, met the stunt coordinator, who's Jeremy Fry. He was the lead stunt driver on the show. Super nice guy. We talked cars a good bit, which was refreshing because I've come across so many drivers that won't talk cars. They'll talk technique and like what they know or what they like about a car, but like the inner workings on why cars do what they do or what we need to make them do another way. Jeremy was the first driver that was like, yeah, no, I like this conversation. And we bounced back and forth a good bit on that. And again, in the conversation, as I've done with everyone else, I mentioned, I love to drive. I would love the opportunity to try stunt driving and see if my skills fit. And he said, all right. And I said, what do you mean, all right? He's like, we'll put you to the test. We'll see if you got what it takes. I'm like, great. And he's like, yeah, I'll slide you an easy day or two, but we'll see if we can get you something that'll test you. Awesome. A few weeks go by, get the call. He said, hey man, you're going to be a picture car mechanic today and a stunt driver. Get to set. My heart's racing. I'm so nervous. What do you need me to do, man? All right, we need to set up for a head-on collision, and then I need you to dodge me at the last second. I said, excuse me. He said, don't crash into me. Don't crash into the camera car. And so I'm coming this way. Jeremy's coming this way. Our approach speed is 40 miles an hour. So if we hit, that's an 80 mile an hour collision. I had to dodge left. He dodges to my right. The hard part for me was that there was a camera car right here. And so I had to split Jeremy and the camera car right at the time. And like the timing is so specific because the camera on the camera car has to catch it. If I go too soon, you don't see anything happen that looks like danger. Or if I go too late, then I'm hitting someone. Which, at the level I'm at now, no big deal. But for a first day, it's as crazy as it sounds. And so we do take one, dodge it, make it. It looks cool. He calls me over radio. He's like, hey man, that was great. I need you to hit this line in the asphalt 2 seconds sooner and meet me where our bumpers will cross about a foot before that line.
So he wants you closer.
Yeah. And like just way more specific and detailed. And I'm like, is this how people measure in stunt driving? This is crazy. This is what? And I'm like, well, I guess it's like parallel parking, right? Like you gotta get tight. You can't. And we did it, I think, 5 or 6 more times and nailed it every time. Again, I wanted to throw up and I thought my heart was going to explode. I was so panicky. I was terrified. But we got through it, and he got out of the car, and he was like, good job. And he shook my hand and walked away, and no one thought anything of it because that's just another day of stunt driving. But from that moment on, I was like, yo, this might be it for me. And he gave me a few more days, nothing as intense. Just being background or stopping short or sliding the car a little bit just to get out of the way to make the scene more dynamic. And all the top stunt coordinators in town were on that movie. And so when Jeremy called me in and told everyone, said, hey, a lot of you may know Ronny as a picture car mechanic, but today he's a stunt driver and you will address him as such. And I was like, my heart, what? I can't take this. What do you mean? And everyone said without a question, because now I know just how much of a badass Jeremy is. Everyone was like, all right, done. Jeremy said it, so it has to be true. And so from that moment on, word kind of got around, and eventually I came across Kevin Waterman. And Kevin runs Dynamic Stunts. He's the lead of this whole operation. And he found out that I used to work on BMWs, and I know them very well. And he knows that I speak racing terms very well and talk about cars in general. And he's like, hey, I got a movie coming up that has a couple of BMWs. Do you want to be our mechanic as a stunt mechanic? And then we'll just throw you in for driving when we can as well. And I said, yes, absolutely. And so we worked on this movie called Killer Man. We had an M5 and then two 528s. The M5 was the hero car, and then we had a stunt car that we needed to jump off a bridge into an alley. And so I set them up for safety and all that kind of stuff. Kevin was doing the jump, and it was the biggest, most expensive stunt of the movie. And it was a big deal because we were jumping the car into the historic district of Savannah. And so we weren't allowed to hit the walls, we weren't allowed to ruin anything, or we would be majorly fined. And so when we were lining up to do the stunt, the car breaks down. And they call me over the radio and they're like, Ronny, the car's not working, what's going on? And I said, let's not even think about it. Let's get the backup car up here. We'll swap parts. We'll get it done. So someone else drove the backup car up. And fortunately, they were the same years of cars. And so there was an aircraft mechanic with me by the name of Chris Muda. And I just started rifling out instructions. I pulled out my tools from my toolbox. I threw a bunch to him. I kept a bunch on my side. And one by one, I was like, take this bolt off, take this component off, take this component off. And in what should have been, hey, it's Tim. And in what should have been a 4-hour job, we got done in 15 minutes. And we got the car started, it was running. Kevin was so grateful. The stunt coordinator, Rudy Weber, was so grateful. And they said, you're on the team from now on for forevermore. That was, we can't believe you just did that. And so Kevin reset, jumped the car, went great. It's an awesome little scene. And that's kind of the start of what I call history now, why I'm a part of Dynamic Stunts. And Kevin started this. He's like, hey man, just so you know, I'm starting it and you're in it. I'm like, okay, great. And you know, I've just been honing my skills ever since.
That sounds like more than 10 years experience.
It's been, so like if we include when I started pursuing being a mechanic and my first autocross, it's about 19 years of experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What is the most, because you already mentioned a few.
Yeah.
What's the most challenging stunt you've ever performed? Would it be the
hands down, and this is gonna sound crazy, and a lot of people are gonna sleep on this, commercial driving work is the hardest stunt work as a stunt driver that I will ever do. It's the most precise, because you have to understand that people that don't understand something will always think that it's easy to do the craziest of things. And so when I was designing today's course, I put a lot of close quarter, slow movement things in, because when you're in a commercial, we're on a really tight frame every single time. And so those rolling shots you see where a car lands into frame and you just kind of see the front 3/4 of the car and it's cruising at whatever speed, that is so hard because they're usually shooting on a 50 or a 70 or something. They're on a long lens. And so like every little bit of back and forth you do reads. And they'll just say, hey, why are you moving so much? They don't understand that matching speeds on the fly is not easy. A lot of people would be like, oh, well, if both cars say 30 miles per hour, then that should be it. Yes, but if it's a roll into shot and you have to do it at a specific speed, also, all speedometers aren't calibrated the same. There's a 5% deviance between most speedometers. So I have to, and I can't look at the camera. I have to look like just a normal person driving. So in my peripheral, I have to make sure I'm landing a moving mark. On sets, when I'm on films and TV shows, if I have to slide a 90, I see like, okay, there's a break in the grass over there. I need my tail end to land right where that grass is, and I need my front end to land where the start of that parking spot is. That's a clear mark, and I can adjust for that however. But if the target's moving constantly, and if it's not a good camera car driver, and they're kind of going back and forth, and I have to keep the shot steady, like, super hard stuff. I'll give the hardest example I had. Both of them were Mercedes shoots. One of them was an E63 AMG, ridiculously fast car. And they said, all right, Ronnie, we're going to start you about 2 blocks away, as fast as you can, full throttle, come into lens. The camera was hanging off of the back of the camera car, and they were just parked. And they said, just shoot into the lens where the emblem, the roundel of the Mercedes logo, just filled the lens. And they were shooting on, I think, like a 35 or a 40. So they were pretty wide. And so to fill the frame, like, had to be in it. And I've never driven this car before. And it's like, all right, well, they want fast. They actually yelled at me before for going too slow. I guess I'm gonna give it. And so within a block, I'm doing 100 miles an hour. And I start to just throttle off at 110. And I'm really good about my brake zones and my distances and landing my marks. And so I start to hit the brake when I think my zone is in. And the crash safety was never turned off on the car. And so as I'm approaching the camera, my dashboard starts to flash red and says brace for impact. And the seats come around and hug me, and the seat and belt tightens up on me. And I'm like, oh no, I messed up. I messed up. And I'm on the brakes and I'm like, please, 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 please. And it's right in front of the lens. And they were like, perfect. All right, let's move on. And they have no idea that I about pooped my pants. And I thought I was going to ruin their $200,000 car. I thought I was going to ruin their $100,000 camera. I thought I was going to ruin their $200,000, you know, crane arm. Oh my God. So that was one. That was hard story number one. Same shoot. They were driving and they were like, hey, we want you to come into frame as fast as you can while we're rolling at 30 miles an hour. All right, great. This time I'm in a S550, and so I come up the ramp. We're out of radio range, so I don't even know if I'm closing in on them or not, and it's a crest on a bridge. So again, 110 miles an hour on this bridge. Hit the crest, I see them, and just, I don't even know how I did it. Lean on the brake when I can, and then just land right in the camera spot. On the first try, I went a little too deep. And I kid you not, it was the matter of I was supposed to stop here, and I went, and then I fell back just a little bit, and they were like, nope, do it again. And I was like, you're kidding. You're kidding. From 110 miles an hour to 30 in this, all right, it's the job, you know? So, and like, it's how you dictate who's the best and who's not. So reset. Do it again, got it on the second shot. There was a little bit of an issue with camera, do it again on the third. Commercial driving is the hardest stunt driving you can do. There are obviously sexier things. Like there's rollovers, there's cannons, you know, drive a car while it's on fire, slide to a mark. I mean, some of the stuff you saw me practicing looks sexy. It's not that hard. It's fun, you know, it gets people's blood going. Not that hard. So yeah, I'd say that.
Can you talk to us a little bit about safety?
Oh man. Safety. The thing about cars and stunt driving, the thing that kills me and why I hold this in such regard is stunt driving is the only stunt, or one of the only stunts, where if you as the stunt person mess up, you can hurt other people. If I was in a fight with another stunt person, the only people getting hurt are me or the other stunt person. If I'm doing wire work, the only person getting hurt is me. If I'm getting set on fire, I'm the only one that's in danger of getting hurt. If I miss a mark in a car, and I was supposed to slide the camera, and that's a manned camera, which I always advocate against. That's, camera's done, knocking out the cameraman, AC, whoever. So when I'm part of a set where we're dealing with cars, the conversation is always, what's the worst thing that can happen? Because I can control my body incredibly well, but as we saw earlier today, my e-brake stopped working, and if I was depending on that e-brake to slide to hit a mark, and there's no other bail options, the car is going to crash. And so that's a worst case scenario. And so if the worst case scenario happens, what are we actually losing? It should never be people. So like, that's like a hard, fast rule for me. Like let's keep everyone else safe. If I'm going to get hurt, I don't want to, but I have the reaction time training and skill set to work around it. So that's priority number one. Like, do not get near the action if you are not needed for the action. And if we can do remote cameras, do remote. Also, like, general skill level in chemistry. When myself and Kevin and Richard are working together, we can push the envelope a lot harder than we can if we're driving with someone that we've never driven with before. Not from we don't trust you perspective, but we don't know what you're capable of. We don't know if you speak the same language as us when it comes to maneuvers. We don't know how you react under pressure or how you adjust on the fly. Like, there's certain things Kevin and I will do specifically where if we're following each other super tight, he knows how to read my car position, that if I'm about to lose it or if I'm about to do something different, he knows how to back off right away within a split second. And I know this because I was on the other side of it when Kevin was first teaching me how to drive or do really high level driving. He was sliding the car around and everything felt fine. And then all of a sudden he does this scream that's hilarious. He goes, "Ah!" I'm like, as soon as I turn to him and go, "What?" the car starts to spin out. And I'm like, how did you know before I even felt it that the car was spinning out? Which was, and like, it makes sense to me now. Like, I know what I'm feeling for now. But as like a guy that was comfortable with cars, has a race history, knows the mechanics of cars, couldn't feel that or see that coming. Holy smokes. So like, is that the kind of driver I'm working with? Like, I don't know if they're at that level or have that knowledge or that experience. So if they don't, then we adjust the maneuvers accordingly. We can always play safer and make the camera work, make the shot look sexier than it is, rather than strain something or put safety at risk to do something that we just think is cool. If that all makes sense.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Those are things that you don't think of when you're sitting there watching a movie.
Right.
As a viewer, you're just, oh my gosh, look at that thing. And then on to the next scene.
Right.
Have you ever had to turn down a stunt that you felt was too dangerous or the proper safety precautions weren't being taken?
I have not.
Okay.
Personally, I'm very honest about my abilities and my comfort level. I'm also very fortunate in the respect that I've only worked for people that I have respect for and respect my opinion as well. And if there is something that's somewhat concerning, they will ask me for an audible, and I'm happy to give alternatives in terms of like, I can't do this, or I don't feel comfortable doing this. How about we take it from this angle instead, or do this instead? And it's something that still works. The only time I had to flat out turn something down when I was called for it was for a water job where they wanted me to emulate drowning because I was I fell off a bridge and then I'm underwater and I'm trying to swim up, but something catches my leg, so I can't make it up and I drown. I turned down the job because I don't know how to swim.
It wouldn't have been
It would not have been an emulated drowning. It would have been a legitimate drowning. And I told the stunt coordinator that if you want authentic looking drowning, I am the man for the job. I request that you have people that can save me if that happens. And then my wife looked at me and she said, no, you're not doing that. And then my friend who was the coordinator said, no, dude, I need you to pretend that you're drowning. I don't want to use my water safety. Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever had to deal with, because when you were mapping it out and showing them what they were going to do today, there was a rain cloud over us and I got a little nervous. Have you ever had to deal with poor weather conditions on set?
Yes. So there was a Mercedes commercial again that I worked on with Kevin and Richard. And we were up at Atlanta Motorsports Park and we were so excited because it was supposed to be the best day on earth. The cars we had access to, the things that we were filming, excited for all of it. And we got there and it was 48 degrees, I think, and misting. It started at 6 a.m. and it did not change the whole day. And that was legitimately the worst track conditions you could ask for, because they were hoping that we could get some drifting in, we could get some really close car to car action happening, all of which we can do when it's dry. But when it's barely misting and it's cold and we're not allowed to get heat in the tires and all that kind of stuff by actually racing the track, it takes just that much to slip and lose the car. And so if we're this close in $200,000 cars and we're mid-corner, like, it's a risk that wasn't worth taking. And, you know, we still got through the day and we got some stuff, but it just didn't look good. And it was all because of weather conditions. So I was supposed to do donuts in this Dodge Challenger Demon, and then there was a Dodge Charger Hellcat in the background that was also supposed to do donuts. Cool, great. So I'm doing my donuts and I don't want it to get super smoky because, one, if I just start generating all kinds of smoke, I'm going to blow the shot. Also, I won't be able to see where I'm going if something weird happens. And so I'm doing my donuts and I hear a noise that I don't think I should be hearing, and it's the whine of the other Hellcat, of the Charger Hellcat, and I'm like, why is it closing in on me? And as I round out on another donut, I look over my shoulder and I see the Hellcat coming right at me. And I was like, oh God. I slam on the brake, cut the other direction and do the donut in in the other direction while this Hellcat flies around me. And they call cut, and I'm like, oh, of course. What happened? What happened? And we found out that stunt driver didn't know how to turn off traction control. And he didn't ask how to turn off traction control. And he didn't know that you had to keep the car in first to do donuts. And so that's what ended up happening with this. So that's like a case of like modifying on the fly. Another clear case would be, actually this kind of worked against the favor of the individual, where an actor wanted to do his own stunts, which I always advise against. Like, don't do that. And it was a fight scenario, so he's fighting off two bad guys, and I'm supposed to come in on his blind side and punch him. And you know, it's a if you know how camera tricks work, like if I punch here, it'll read on camera that I'm hitting myself, but I'm very far away. And so there was one take where I throw the punch and he was too slow. And so he turns and he gets scared, and he had a staff with him. And so he looks and he smacks himself with the staff as he repositions it and reacts to my punch. And, you know, he stabs me and we keep going. And he was like, man, you punched me. And I'm like, sure didn't, bro. sure didn't. He's like, man, you came in so early though. And I'm like, sure didn't, bro. Sure. And he ended up with a nice shiner because he cracked himself with a stick. And that's one of those cases of like, gotta work around it. You know what I mean? Like, however we can.
You've mentioned manual a lot. Do you ever stunt drive with automatic transmission?
Preferably.
Okay.
Yeah, most of the cars we come across are automatic, and it's great because it's just one less thing to think about. And, you know, the other thing is like, driving a manual is fun. I love driving a manual. But I'm faster in an automatic, and automatics are more reliable in the sense that it'll do the same thing over and over. If I'm in a manual, I'm gonna keep questioning what gear I should be doing this move in. And if for whatever reason, like a synchro binds up, then I won't get into the gear in time, and then the timing of the shot is messed up, so.
Okay. Do you have a favorite stunt driving scene, even if you didn't do it yourself, from a movie or television show?
Yeah, my favorite stunt driving sequence would probably be from Baby Driver. Okay. That opening Subaru sequence, because it not only demonstrated proficient driving skill on Jeremy's part, it also demonstrated how much camera work matters in terms of how to move with a car and make it look super sexy. So if you remember the opening sequence, the Subaru backs up unexpectedly from robbing the bank, and he whips this 180, and then the 180 drifts around another peninsula. And it's a cool move. It's a move that a lot of us have done before. But the way the camera tracks through the buildings, and then the trick was the camera car dipped into an alleyway to let the car swipe frame, and then they backed up and chased after it. It's magnificent camera work, you know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm always about the team effort, because I can do a lot of cool stuff. If I don't have someone to make the stuff look cool though, it's not gonna get the likes on Instagram, you know what I mean? Like, it takes the team.
Yeah. Okay, just a couple more questions.
Sure.
How do you maintain your physical and mental health to perform the stunts effectively?
Physical health, eat healthy, don't drink alcohol too much. I personally do CrossFit 5 days a week. I don't think you need to do that to maintain a stunt driver physique. I do it just because it makes my back not hurt and my knees not hurt, because it builds all the muscles surrounding it. I work out at a gym with a bunch of old people, so they care about preservation and general health rather than, you know, looking swole and broing out. And good sleep. People neglect sleep so much. For mental health, I like to meditate, read books, listen to classical music, just do something that keeps me focused. I also play a lot of puzzle games, just so like you can think fast. I'm a very big video gamer, so like those split-minute decisions that you have to make, or split-second decisions you have to make when so much is happening all at once, especially in more modern video games, that all translates for me, at least.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone that aspires to be a stunt driver or a stunt performer?
Don't do it. And I say this about the entertainment industry as a whole. If you do not absolutely love it, and if you cannot picture yourself doing anything else, then go for it. But go for it knowing it's going to be such a hard road, or expect it to be a hard road. Some people got in easy, and they've had smooth sailing, and have very, you know, rich careers now. But for someone like me, when I think back on my path, I would never wish that on anyone. You know, being near homeless, you know, sleeping inside of your car outside of auditions just to get rejected, you know, ending up on really crummy sets with really crummy actors that think they're amazing, ending up with, you know, people with egos the size of this planet. Like, there's a lot of unpleasantries about this industry. And the other thing with stunt work specifically, like, you can seriously get hurt. We have friends that passed away on set because stunts have gone wrong. You know, there was a recent incident where people that weren't stunts got hurt in a driving sequence here in Atlanta. Completely uncalled for. Like, I don't wish that stuff on people. I want people to be happy and healthy and live their life as long as they can. But if all of that still doesn't deter a person from getting into the industry, work hard, be nice, learn, take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Understand that experience is far more valuable than just mental knowledge. Put things into practice, help people out, be a good human being, because we, as the entertainment industry, put out media that influences our society as a whole. And like, if you don't understand the weight of that, like, figure it out, because it is important. And, you know, yes, we're paid very well, we're compensated very well, and we have fun jobs. And, you know, I'll tell everyone that I have the coolest job on earth and I love it, but there is significance to it. And I think it'd be disrespectful to not acknowledge that.
Well, you answered all my questions very thoroughly, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Was there anything I didn't ask you, anything I didn't touch on? Did you want to clear up any other misconceptions that you can think of?
I mean, I guess one thing I would say, if anyone's trying to get into stunt driving specifically, it's outrageously expensive. It's so expensive. You know, it's cheaper than racing, fortunately, which is why I'm here and not on a racetrack, competing with, you know, some big sponsorships. But, you know, getting into a car is $5,000 to $6,000, and then maintenance is anywhere between $200 to $400 a month, and tires every weekend, every set of tires, anywhere between, if you find them used, $50 to new ones can be $200. So that's like another $1,000 a month. That doesn't include fuel, that doesn't include insurance, that doesn't include catastrophic failures, like we have broken parts all over our walls just from things that went wrong. Yeah, so that's definitely something I would say about stunt driving. Be sure that if you want to get into it, you have the money for it and you absolutely want to do it. And if you realize it's not for you, there is no shame in just bowing out. We do not insult people that try it and say it's not for me and then graciously bow out.
That's everything.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for doing this.